The silence in the house was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was my 60th birthday, and the only guest was the steady ticking rhythm of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. The entire day had been a ritual of hope. I had cleaned every surface until it shone, even the picture frames holding photos of my son at various ages. His gap-toothed grin at 7, his proud smile at high school graduation. The centerpiece of the dining table was a chocolate cake, his absolute favorite, decorated with simple white icing. Next to it, a pot of beef stew, the recipe passed down from my own mother, simmered on the stove, filling the air with a warm, savory scent that did nothing to warm the chill in my heart. I had set 2 places at the table with my best china, the plates with the delicate blue flower pattern that only came out on special occasions. My own plate sat pristine and empty. The other plate, his plate, waited across from me. The clock ticked on, each click of the hand a hammer blow to my thinning patience. 7 o'clock became 8. 8 became 8:30. The stew began to form a skin on its surface. I sent a text around 7:15. Just checking if you're on your way, sweetheart. Everything is ready. No reply. The knot in my stomach tightened with every passing minute. Finally, at 8:45, my phone buzzed, the vibration startling in the quiet room. A wave of relief washed over me so powerfully I felt dizzy. He was okay. He was just running late. But the relief was short-lived. It wasn't a call. It was a text message. My thumb trembled as I opened it. The words on the screen did not make sense at first. I read them once, then again, my mind refusing to process them. Mom, I'm not coming. Anna and I have talked, and we both feel it's best for our new family if we create some distance. Your constant need for reassurance and company is emotionally draining, and to be honest, it's become unhealthy. I need to focus on my wife now. Please, do not contact me again. The phone slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the wooden table. The words, emotionally draining and unhealthy, echoed in the hollow space he had left behind. He didn't call me a bad mother directly, but the accusation was there, woven between the cold, formal lines. I looked at the empty chair, at the plate with the blue flowers, at the cake that no one would eat. A single, hot tear traced a path down my cheek, followed by another. I did not sob. I just sat in the crushing silence, the ghost of a birthday song dying in my throat, completely and utterly alone. The hurt from that night was a fresh wound, but the poison had been dripping into my relationship with my son for a long time. I remembered the first day he brought Anna home. His face was lit up with a kind of awe I'd never seen before. "Mom, this is Anna," he'd said, his voice bursting with pride. She was beautiful. There was no denying that, with sleek, dark hair and clothes that looked more expensive than my entire living room set. She shook my hand, her grip firm, her smile perfectly polite, but not quite reaching her cool, assessing eyes. She had complimented our house, calling it quaint. But I heard the subtle judgment underneath. Over a dinner I had spent all day preparing, she talked about her family's business, their vacations in Europe, and the importance of networking. My son listened, captivated, while I mostly just passed the potatoes. Later, I was carrying empty plates into the kitchen when I overheard their conversation, their voices low from the living room. "She's very sweet," Anna was saying, her tone implying the opposite. "But it's a very simple life out here, isn't it? Don't you ever feel held back?" My son's reply was a weak, "She's just my mom. She's always been there for me." "There's a difference between being there for someone and being dependent on them," Anna countered smoothly. "She leans on you too much. It's not a son's job to be his mother's emotional support system. It's not healthy for our future." I had frozen in the doorway, the plate suddenly heavy in my hands. I wanted to march in and defend myself, to tell her that my love wasn't a burden. But I stayed silent, a statue of shame. I heard my son sigh, a defeated sound. "I know, it's just complicated." That was the moment the first crack appeared. After that, the changes were slow but steady. His weekly visits became every other week, then once a month. Our long, rambling phone calls were replaced with short, hurried texts. "Busy with work. Sorry, can't talk. We have plans with Anna's parents." Each cancellation was a small cut, and Anna was always there, just out of sight, holding the knife. She was rewiring him, teaching him to see my love as need, my devotion as desperation. And he was learning his lesson all too well. The weeks that followed my birthday were a blur of grayness. I felt like I was moving through thick, heavy water. The world had lost its color and its sound. I stopped drawing the curtains, letting the daylight fade into night without my notice. The beef stew sat in the pot until it spoiled, and I finally threw the entire thing, pot and all, into the trash. The birthday cake, hardened and cracked, a monument to my foolish hope, until I couldn't stand the sight of it anymore. I didn't answer the phone. I didn't change out of my bathrobe. The house, once my pride and joy, became a messy, dusty cave that mirrored the state of my heart. I would just sit in my armchair, staring at the blank television screen, holding the phone that never rang. The silence was a physical presence, suffocating me. It was Mr. Miller, my neighbor from across the street, who finally broke through the fog. He was a kind, widowed man in his 70s who had always exchanged pleasant waves with me. After 2 weeks of seeing no movement from my house, he came knocking. I ignored the first knock. He came back the next day, knocking louder, his voice firm with concern. "Hello? Is everything all right in there? I'm getting worried." Reluctantly, I shuffled to the door and opened it a crack. The bright sunlight was painful. "Mr. Miller's friendly face fell when he saw me. I must have been a sight, my hair unwashed, my eyes swollen and red. "Oh, my dear," he said softly, all his usual cheerfulness gone. "What's happened?" I tried to form words to say I was fine, but my chin just trembled. A sob broke loose from my chest, and then I was crying, great, heaving sobs that shook my whole body. I was mortified, but I couldn't stop. Mr. Miller didn't ask any more questions. He just gently guided me to the kitchen, sat me down at the table, and put the kettle on. He found the tea bags and 2 mugs, moving with a quiet efficiency that was immensely comforting. He didn't try to fill the silence with empty words. He just let me cry, placing a steaming mug of tea in front of me and a box of tissues nearby. His simple, quiet kindness was a lifeline thrown into my ocean of despair. For the first time since the text, I didn't feel entirely invisible. Mr. Miller became my anchor to the real world. He started coming by every day, always with a small excuse. "I baked too many muffins," or "Could you help me identify this bird in my garden?" He never pushed me to talk, but his presence forced me to perform small, normal tasks, making tea, sitting in a chair, looking out the window. One sunny afternoon, he declared, "Right. That's enough moping. You're going to help me clean out my garage. These old bones can't do it alone, and you look like you could use the distraction." I wanted to refuse, to retreat back into my dark house, but the determined look in his eye brooked no argument. Reluctantly, I followed him across the street. The garage was a chaotic jumble of memories, old bicycles, toolboxes, boxes of who knows what. The physical work was strangely therapeutic. Sorting, lifting, and deciding what to keep or throw away gave my restless hands something to do. As I was moving a stack of old newspapers, I uncovered a dusty cardboard box with my own name scrawled on the side in faded marker. I frowned, pulling it out. I had given this to Mr. Miller for temporary storage years ago, during a flood in my basement, and had completely forgotten about it. Curious, I lifted the flaps. Inside was a time capsule of a life I had almost forgotten. There were my old college textbooks, their pages filled with my eager, youthful notes. Beneath them, I found a leather-bound portfolio. I opened it, and a faint smell of old paper wafted out. Inside were detailed business plans I had drafted, filled with ideas and projections for a small gourmet food company I dreamed of starting before life took a different turn. And then, I found it. A photograph. It was a picture of a much younger me, my hair in a stylish bob, wearing a sharp business suit. I was standing on a stage, shaking a man's hand, accepting an award for top sales performance. My smile was confident, my eyes bright with ambition and intelligence. I stared at that woman. Who was she? Where had she gone? I had buried her under years of packed lunches, parent-teacher conferences, and laundry. I had quit that job to be a full-time mother after my husband passed away, and I never looked back. I had considered it my most important job, but my son's text had made it feel worthless. Holding that photo, a spark, tiny but defiant, ignited in my chest. That woman in the picture was a fighter. She had ideas and dreams. She wasn't just a mother who could be discarded. Maybe, just maybe, she was still in there. The spark was fragile, but it was hope. I couldn't sleep that night. The image of the woman in the photograph was burned onto the back of my eyelids. Her confident gaze was a challenge. The spark of an idea that had ignited in Mr. Miller's garage was now a small, steady flame. I had a talent. I was a fantastic cook. My jams, pickles, and special sauces weren't just good. People always asked for the recipes. For years, it was just a hobby, a way to show love. What if it could be more? The next morning, I marched over to Mr. Miller's house, the business plan from the box clutched in my hand. I found him reading the newspaper on his porch. "I have an idea," I announced, my voice stronger than it had been in months. He put his paper down and smiled. "I'm listening." I spread the old, yellowing papers on his patio table. "I want to start a business, a small one, selling my jams and preserves. I'll call it Hometown Pantry." Mr. Miller's eyes, wise and kind, studied me. He didn't dismiss it as a silly dream. He picked up one of the old business plans, his accountant's mind already whirring. "The numbers in this are solid," he mused. "A bit outdated, but the foundation is smart." "Will you help me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, terrified of his answer. "My dear," he said, his smile widening, "I thought you'd never ask." We spent the rest of the day at my kitchen table, the same table where I had sat in heartbroken silence just weeks before. Now it was a command center. It was covered in spreadsheets, cost analyses for fruit and jars, and potential price lists. The air was filled with the energy of creation, not the stillness of loss. We were building something from the ashes. It was a tiny, fragile seedling of a dream, but it was mine, and I was going to protect it with everything I had. The following week was a whirlwind of activity. I withdrew a small, precious portion of my savings, money I had been putting away for a rainy day, and it was certainly pouring now. I went to the bank and felt a thrill of nerves and excitement as I opened a separate business account. Then, Mr. Miller and I drove to a restaurant supply store in the next town over, and I bought my first commercial-sized boxes of glass jars, bags of sugar, and giant pots. My quiet, tidy kitchen was transformed into a bustling workshop. The countertops were covered with bowls of glistening red strawberries, piles of fuzzy peaches, and bundles of fragrant rhubarb. The air grew thick and sweet, with the sound of bubbling fruit and the scent of citrus and spice. The constant, gentle pop, pop, pop of jars sealing in their boiling water bath became my new favorite sound, a sound of success, of creation. My first official products were 24 jars of strawberry rhubarb jam and 15 jars of my special spicy peach chutney. I gave them away to my closest neighbors, to Mr. Miller, and to the friendly owner of the local grocery store, a man named Frank who had known me for years. "Just try them," I said, trying to sound confident. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Frank. "Margaret," he said, his voice booming. "What did you put in that jam? I had a lady offer to buy the sample jar right off the counter. Can you get me 20 jars of each by the end of the week?" 20 jars. I nearly dropped the phone. It felt like a massive, impossible order. It felt like a miracle. "Yes," I stammered. "Absolutely, Frank. Thank you." I hung up and let out a whoop of joy that echoed through the house. Mr. Miller, who was helping me label jars, looked up and grinned. The first step on my new path had been taken, and it was a firm, confident one. As the orders from Frank's store grew steadily, I realized I couldn't do it all by myself. The cooking I could handle, but the selling at the local farmer's market, the bookkeeping, and the heavy lifting of deliveries were too much for one person. It was time to build a team. I first hired Sarah, a young woman in her 20s who worked at the market selling handmade soaps. She had a bright, easy smile and a natural talent for talking to people. I saw the way she engaged customers, remembered their names, and genuinely listened to them. I offered her a job, and she accepted with enthusiasm. Next was Ben. He was a quiet, strong man in his 40s who did handyman work around the neighborhood. He was reliable, honest, and never complained. I asked him if he would be interested in helping with deliveries and managing our small storage shed. He simply nodded and said, "Be here Monday, ma'am." Our little trio, with Mr. Hank Miller as our financial advisor, was an unlikely family. Sarah brought energy and new ideas, like creating beautiful, rustic labels for the jars. Ben was our rock, his strong, silent presence a calming influence. Mr. Miller kept our finances in order with a sharp eye, and I was the heart, the creator of the products that were starting to fly off the shelves. We worked together in a happy, chaotic harmony. The kitchen was often filled with the sound of Sarah's laughter, the clinking of jars as Ben packed them, and the steady hum of productivity. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of belonging and purpose. I was not just a discarded mother. I was a boss, a mentor, and a friend. One afternoon, Sarah came to me, her tablet in hand, her eyes shining with excitement. "We're doing great locally," she said, "but we're thinking too small. We need a website. We need to sell online." The idea terrified me. The internet was a vast, unknown world. I could barely check my email. "Oh, Sarah, I don't know," I fretted. "It sounds so complicated and expensive." "It's not, I promise," she insisted. "I can set up a simple one. We can start small. Just think, we could sell our jams to someone in another state. Wouldn't that be amazing?" Mr. Miller, always the voice of reason, crunched the numbers and agreed it was a smart, low-risk next step. Ben offered to build the shipping boxes himself to save money. Faced with their united enthusiasm, I took a deep breath and agreed. "All right, let's try it." Sarah worked her magic, and within a week, Hometown Pantry had a beautiful, simple website with professional photos of our products. We held our breath. 2 days later, the first online order came in. It was for 3 jars of jam, and it was shipping to a city over 200 miles away. We all cheered. Then another order came, and another. Within a month, we were shipping dozens of packages a week, all across the country. My little kitchen-based business was becoming a real company. It was around this time that a food writer from a major city newspaper was passing through our town. She stopped at Frank's store, tried a sample of my spiced pear butter, and was captivated. She asked Frank about the maker, and he, beaming with pride, gave her my number. She called and asked for an interview. "The Secret's in the Jar, From Heartbreak to Hometown Pantry," the headline read when the article was published. It featured a large, color photo of me holding a jar of golden peach jam, standing in the heart of my bustling kitchen. The article spoke of my inspiring second act and the unforgettable, love-infused flavor of my products. The day the article came out, our website, as Sarah had predicted, crashed. It was overwhelmed with over 1,000 orders in a single day. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, now far too small for our operation, reading the emails piling up, and I started to cry. But this time, they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy and shock. My simple little dream was now a roaring success. While my world was expanding with color and noise, my son's world was shrinking, becoming quieter and more tense. He and Anna lived in a beautiful modern apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive minimalist furniture. But the air inside was often thick with unspoken arguments and simmering resentment. My son had seen the newspaper article. He was sitting in a trendy coffee shop near his office, and the man at the next table was reading the business section. He saw my photograph. He saw the headline that included the words, "Successful Business." He felt a jolt, as if he'd been electrocuted. That was his mother. The woman he had dismissed as emotionally draining was now being celebrated in a major newspaper. A confusing storm of emotions raged inside him. A flicker of pride was quickly smothered by a wave of hot shame and a deep, unsettling confusion. How had she done this without him? The thought was both impressive and deeply threatening. He lost his job a month later. His company was downsizing, and as one of the newer, more highly paid employees, he was an easy cut. Anna's family, whom he had always relied on as a safety net, was suddenly full of excuses. It turned out their wealth was a fragile facade, propped up by debt and risky investments. They were in no position to help. The bills piled up, the expensive car lease, the astronomical rent, the credit card statements from their lavish lifestyle. My son and Anna started arguing in harsh, whispered fights behind their bedroom door. "You need to find something else." "Anything," Anna would hiss. "I'm trying." "The market is terrible," he'd retort, his voice strained with panic. "Well, try harder. My parents can't bail us out this time. This is your responsibility." He felt the walls closing in. He had no job, a mountain of debt, and a wife whose love seemed conditional on his success. He had pushed away all his old friends, and the one person who had always been his unconditional safe harbor, me, was someone he had cruelly cast aside. He was trapped, and for the first time, he saw the glittering life Anna had offered him for the gilded cage it was. The final collapse happened quickly. The eviction notice came first. They had fallen 3 months behind on their rent. Then, the bank repossessed Anna's luxury car. The arguments were no longer whispers. They were screaming matches that echoed through the empty, echoing rooms of their half-packed apartment. "This is a disaster," Anna shrieked one night, her face contorted with an anger he had never seen before. "A complete and utter disaster. I can't live like this." "What do you want me to do, Anna?" he yelled back, his voice raw. "I've applied everywhere. I don't know. Figure it out." She picked up a decorative vase and threw it against the wall, where it shattered into 1,000 pieces. "I will not be poor. I will not live in some pathetic little box." The next morning, she was gone. She left a note on the kitchen counter, written in her elegant handwriting. "I'm staying with my parents. I can't do this anymore. Don't call me until you fix this mess." She had taken her jewelry and her best clothes. She had left everything else, including him. My son sat on the floor of the living room, surrounded by packing boxes, his head in his hands. The silence after the storm was deafening. He was completely and utterly alone. He had no job, no home, no wife, and no hope. The weight of his mistakes was a physical pressure on his chest, making it hard to breathe. He had sacrificed his relationship with his mother for a life that had turned to dust in his hands. In the crushing silence, one desperate, humiliating thought rose to the surface. His mother. She was successful now. She had money. She was his last and only resort. It was a cold, rainy evening when he found the courage, or perhaps the desperation, to drive to my town. He hadn't been to my house in over a year. He was shocked to see that my small home now had a professionally painted sign for Hometown Pantry on the front lawn, and a large, renovated shed in the backyard glowed with light, the sounds of activity coming from within. He wasn't coming to his mother's quiet house. He was coming to a place of business. He parked his car down the street, his hands trembling on the steering wheel. The rain hammered on the roof. What would he even say? He rehearsed a dozen speeches in his head, but they all sounded hollow and selfish. Taking a deep, shaky breath, he got out of the car and walked through the downpour to the shed. He could see me through the window, standing at a table, talking seriously with Ben. I looked different, older perhaps, but also stronger, more focused. I wasn't the sad, lonely woman he had last seen. I was a woman in command. He pushed the door open. A bell jingled. Both Ben and I looked up. The sight of him standing there, drenched and defeated, sent a jolt through my system. My maternal instinct screamed at me to run to him, to wrap him in a towel, to ask him what was wrong. But the memory of my birthday, of the empty chair and the cold text, froze me in place. The hurt was a wall between us. "Mom," he said, his voice a broken whisper. It was a voice I didn't recognize, stripped of all its former confidence. I need help." The room was silent except for the sound of the rain on the roof. Ben looked from me to my son and back again, his expression unreadable. I looked at my son, this stranger who shared my face, and I felt a complex storm of pity, anger, and a deep, weary sadness. I finally spoke, my voice calm and steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside. "This is my place of business," I said. "If you need something, you can make an appointment with Sarah tomorrow morning." The shock on his face was palpable. He had expected tears or anger or an immediate embrace. He had not expected this cool, professional dismissal. His shoulders slumped in utter defeat. "Mom, please," he begged, his voice cracking. 9 o'clock, I repeated, turning my attention back to the papers on my desk, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. "Don't be late." The next morning, at exactly 9 o'clock, my son walked into the small office we had set up in the front of the shed. Sarah, who knew the whole story, greeted him with a polite but frosty professionalism and showed him to a simple wooden chair. He looked terribly out of place in his wrinkled former office clothes, sitting in this workspace that smelled of sugar and wood shavings. I came out of my small private office and sat down at the desk opposite him. I placed a notepad and pen in front of me, as if he were a sales representative. "All right," I began, my voice level. "Explain your situation." He flinched at my tone. Haltingly, he told me everything. Losing his job, Anna's family's hidden debt, the eviction notice, the repossession of the car. His voice grew quieter as he described Anna leaving, the shame of it burning in his eyes. "I have nothing left," he finished, staring at his hands. I need money, just a loan to get back on my feet. I'll pay you back, I promise. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment after he finished. I looked at him, this man I had raised, who had thrown me away and was now coming back only when he had nowhere else to go. I'm not going to give you money, I said firmly. His face collapsed. It was the final blow. But, I continued, and his head lifted slightly, I am offering you a job. Confusion and a flicker of offense crossed his face. A job? Yes. We need help in the warehouse. It's manual labor, moving boxes, packing orders, loading the delivery truck. It's hard work. The pay is fair and it's honest. You can start on Monday. I could see the internal war on his face. Pride, shame, and desperation battled for control. He was a college graduate, a former executive, and I was offering him a job as a warehouse grunt, but he had no other options. The last of his pride crumbled. Okay, he whispered, not meeting my eyes. I'll take it. Monday morning arrived, cold and gray. My son showed up in an old pair of jeans and a t-shirt, looking like he hadn't slept. Ben was waiting for him, his arms crossed. Ben was a good man, but he was fair and tough, and he had seen the pain I had gone through. He would show my son no special favors. The shipment of jars arrived. They need to be unloaded from the pallet and stacked on shelves A through D, Ben said, his tone leaving no room for discussion. The packing slips need to be checked against the inventory. Let's go. The work was brutally physical. My son's hands, soft from years of desk work, were soon covered in blisters that broke open and bled. He had to lift 50-pound boxes of sugar and flour. He sweated through his shirt as he loaded heavy crates of finished products onto Ben's truck. I watched him sometimes from my office window. I saw him stop, leaning against a shelf to catch his breath, his face pale with strain. The part of me that was his mother ached to run out with a glass of water and a bandage for his hands. But the part of me that he had broken knew that he needed this. He needed to understand the value of hard work, the dignity of earning something for himself. He made mistakes. He mislabeled a box, sending peach chutney to a customer who ordered strawberry jam. Ben didn't yell. He just made him stay late, unpack the entire shipment, and repack it correctly, without pay for the extra time. It was a harsh lesson, but a necessary one. There were no shortcuts here. A few weeks into the job, Anna called him. From my office, I could hear his side of the conversation, his voice tight with stress. No, Anna, I told you, I'm working. It doesn't matter where I'm working. It's a job, isn't it? No, it's not at a company, it's for my mom. What do you mean, humiliating? Anna, don't. Anna. He pulled the phone away from his ear and stared at it. She had hung up on him. Later that day, a formal-looking envelope arrived for him at the workshop. It was from a lawyer. Divorce papers. Anna was making it official. The note attached was brief and cruel. I can't be married to a man who works in a warehouse. I deserve better. That night, my son hit rock bottom. He went back to his tiny, rented room and sat on the floor, the divorce papers scattered around him. The woman he had chosen over his own mother had discarded him the moment he was no longer successful. The full, devastating weight of his mistake crashed down on him. He had traded unconditional love for conditional, shallow affection, and he had lost. He cried, great, heaving sobs of regret and loneliness for the life he had thrown away and the mother he had hurt so deeply. Something shifted in him after that night. The last remnants of his arrogance seemed to vanish. He stopped seeing the job as a punishment and started treating it as an opportunity. He arrived earlier than Ben. He stayed later. He didn't just move boxes, he started studying the process. He noticed inefficiencies, how the packing station was set up in a way that wasted time, how the inventory system was outdated. One day, he tentatively approached Ben. Ben, I had an idea about the packing flow. If we moved the tape dispenser here and pre-folded the boxes in the morning, we could probably pack orders 20% faster. Ben, a man of few words, listened. He grunted, thought about it, and then said, show me. My son sketched out his idea. It was smart. Ben looked at the sketch, then at my son, and gave a slow, appreciative nod. We'll try it tomorrow. The new system worked. Sarah also started taking him under her wing, teaching him how to use the complex order management software. He was a quick learner, and his sharp, analytical mind, which had been wasted in his old job, finally found a practical use. He was slowly, painstakingly rebuilding himself not as an executive, but as a humble, hard-working man. I watched this transformation from a distance. I said nothing to him. I didn't praise him or encourage him. I just watched. And for the first time, I felt a tiny, fragile bud of hope begin to bloom alongside the hurt in my heart. One evening, I was working late in my office, going over the monthly profit and loss statements with Mr. Miller. I heard a soft, hesitant knock on the door. "Come in," I called. The door opened, and my son stood there. He was holding 2 mugs of coffee. He walked in and carefully set one down on my desk. "I remember you like it with just a little cream," he said softly, his voice rough from the day's work. I was taken aback. It was such a small thing, but it was the first time he had thought of my needs, my preferences, in years. I looked at the mug, then at him. The angry, entitled young man was gone. In his place was a quieter, more grounded person, his eyes clear and sincere. "Thank you," I said, my own voice a little unsteady. He stood there for a moment, awkwardly, as if gathering his courage. Then he spoke, his gaze fixed on the floor. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said. The words were simple, but they were filled with a weight I had never heard from him before. I was a terrible son. I was wrong. About everything. He didn't make excuses. He didn't blame Anna. He took full responsibility. Then, before I could even form a reply, he turned and left, closing the door quietly behind him. I sat in the silence of my office, the steam from the coffee rising in a gentle curl. I picked up the mug. It was warm in my hands. I didn't drink it. I just held it, feeling its warmth seep into my skin, a small, tangible symbol of the first real, selfless gesture he had made in years. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was a start. The wall around my heart didn't crumble, but I felt a single, small stone come loose. A few weeks later, we faced our biggest crisis yet. Ben came into my office, his face grim. "The truck's broken down," he said. "It's the transmission. It's going to be out for at least 3 days." My blood ran cold. "What about the Greenfields order?" I asked, my voice tight with panic. The Greenfields organic grocery chain was our largest client ever. We had a massive order due for their grand opening in 2 days. The contract had a strict penalty clause for late delivery, and losing them would be a financial and reputational disaster from which we might not recover. "I've called every trucking company in a 50-mile radius," Ben said. "No one has anything available on such short notice." Sarah was on the phone, trying to calmly explain the situation to the impatient buyer from Greenfields, her voice strained. "I understand, sir. We are exploring every possible option." The mood in the workshop was tense, bordering on despair. All our hard work was about to go up in smoke because of one mechanical failure. I felt the old familiar tendrils of panic and helplessness starting to wrap around me. My son had been listening quietly from the doorway to the warehouse. He stepped into the office, his brow furrowed in thought. "I have an idea," he said, his voice cutting through the anxiety. Everyone turned to look at him. All eyes were on my son. Sarah held the phone away from her ear. Ben stopped pacing. I leaned forward, desperate for any solution. "There's a small regional airport about an hour from here," he explained, speaking quickly but clearly. "They run cargo flights for overnight packages. If we can get the order there by 7 tonight, it can be on a plane and will arrive in the city by morning. We just need someone on the other end to pick it up from their cargo terminal." "It's 100 boxes," Ben said, his voice heavy with doubt. "That's not a small overnight package, that's a pallet." "I know," my son said, "but if we break the shipment down, we can send it as multiple palletized shipments on the same flight. It will be expensive, very expensive, but it might be our only chance." He looked at me, waiting for a decision. The cost would wipe out our profit for the entire order, maybe even put us in the red. But losing Greenfields as a client would be far more costly in the long run. I saw the logic in his eyes, and more than that, I saw a determination I hadn't seen in him since he was a boy trying to solve a difficult puzzle. "Do it," I said, the words leaving my mouth before I could second-guess myself. "Whatever it takes." The workshop exploded into a frenzy of controlled chaos. My son was suddenly a general, and we were his army. He was on the phone with the airport cargo office, his voice firm and professional as he negotiated rates and arranged the paperwork. Ben and his team began the back-breaking work of breaking down the large pallet and restacking the boxes into smaller, airport-approved units. Sarah took over all other communications, shielding us from other distractions. I rolled up my sleeves and joined the packing line, taping boxes and checking labels alongside everyone else. There were no bosses or employees in that moment. There was only a single team fighting for a common goal. My son didn't just give orders, he worked harder than anyone. He was drenched in sweat, his blisters reopening as he lifted and stacked. He moved between the phone and the warehouse floor, coordinating times and solving problems on the fly. I watched him, this new version of my son, and felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in a long time: pride. Just before 6, the last box was loaded onto Ben's personal truck and 2 other vehicles we had borrowed. My son climbed into the passenger seat of Ben's truck. "We'll call you when it's loaded on the plane," he said to me, his face smudged with dirt, but his eyes bright with purpose. Then they were gone, racing against the clock. The wait was agonizing. The workshop was quiet, the chaos replaced by an exhausted, nervous silence. Sarah and I sat at the desk, staring at the phone. An hour passed, then another. Every minute felt like an hour. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios. What if they were in an accident? What if the airport refused the shipment? What if it was all for nothing and Greenfield still dropped us? The old, fearful part of me was ready for everything to fall apart. Finally, a little after 9, the phone rang. Sarah snatched it up. "Hello? Hometown Pantry?" She listened, and her entire body sagged with relief. She gave me a thumbs up and a wobbly smile. Yes, we understand. Thank you so much." She hung up and looked at me, her eyes shining. "It's on the plane, it's done." The relief was so profound it felt like a physical force. We had done it. We had saved the order. But more than that, my son had saved us. He had seen a path where the rest of us saw only a dead end. The next afternoon, an email arrived from the head buyer at Greenfields. The subject line was "Redelivery." My hand trembled as I opened it. "To the team at Hometown Pantry," it began. "We were prepared for a significant problem with our grand opening. Instead, your shipment arrived this morning, ahead of schedule. Your logistical coordinator, who I believe is your son, called me personally this morning to ensure our team knew exactly where and when to pick up the shipment. We are deeply impressed not only by the quality of your products, but by your incredible commitment and problem-solving under pressure. We look forward to a long and prosperous partnership. Please send our thanks to your entire team." I read the email 3 times. Then I printed it out and walked into the main workshop. My son was back at work, quietly stacking jars, looking exhausted but peaceful. The rest of the team was watching me. I held up the printed email. "We did it," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Greenfields is not just happy, they're impressed." I looked directly at my son. "We wouldn't have saved this account without you. You didn't just do your job, you went above and beyond. Thank you." For the first time, the applause from Sarah and Ben and the others wasn't just polite, it was warm, genuine, and full of respect. My son looked down, a faint blush on his cheeks, but he was smiling. The next morning, I called my son into my office. He came in, looking a little nervous, as if expecting bad news. "Close the door," I said. He did. "Sit down." He sat. I looked at him, this man who had been a stranger for so long. I saw the calluses on his hands, the new strength in his shoulders, and the quiet humility in his eyes. "I'm promoting you," I said, "effective immediately. We need a full-time logistics manager to handle shipping, inventory, and planning. The job is yours." He stared at me, his mouth slightly open. "Mom, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll take it," I said, a small smile touching my lips. "The pay is better. The hours are still long, but you'll be using your mind as much as your back. You've more than earned it." Tears welled in his eyes, but they weren't tears of shame or self-pity. They were tears of gratitude and accomplishment. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered, "for the job and for the second chance. I won't let you down." "I know you won't," I said, and for the first time I truly believed it. With my son officially part of the management team, the dynamic of the business shifted. He brought a new level of organization and foresight. He implemented a new digital inventory system that saved us hours of work each week. He negotiated better rates with shipping companies, saving us money. Our weekly dinners became a regular thing. They were different now. We talked about business plans, marketing ideas, and expansion possibilities. He listened to my ideas with respect, and I listened to his. We were no longer just mother and son, we were partners. The conversation was easy, filled with a mutual respect that had been missing for years. One Sunday, he came over and helped me weed my long-neglected vegetable garden. The sun was warm on our backs as we worked side by side in the dirt, not saying much, just enjoying the quiet companionship. It felt peaceful. It felt like healing. It was my birthday again. I didn't want a big party. I just wanted my new family around me. I invited Mr. Miller, Sarah, Ben, and my son for a simple dinner at my house. The table was set, but this time it wasn't for 2. It was for 5. The room was filled with the sound of laughter and easy conversation. Mr. Miller and Ben were arguing good-naturedly about baseball. Sarah was telling a funny story about a customer. My son was laughing, his face relaxed and happy. He looked over at me and smiled, a real true smile that reached his eyes. I looked at the chair he was sitting in. It was the same chair that had sat empty the year before. Now it was filled, not just with his presence, but with his spirit, his renewed self. The ghost of that lonely birthday was finally laid to rest. After everyone had left, my son stayed behind to help me wash the dishes, just like he used to when he was a boy. "Mom," he said, as he handed me a wet plate to dry. "I need to ask you something. Why did you give me a chance? After what I did, why did you let me back in?" I put down the towel and looked at him. This was the question that had been hanging between us for months. "Revenge isn't about hurting someone who hurt you," I said slowly, choosing my words with care. "It's about reclaiming the power they stole. I didn't help you just to be nice. I helped you for 2 reasons. First, I needed to see if the good, honest man I raised was still in there, buried under all of Anna's influence and his own pride. And second, I needed you to see that I was always more than just a mother you could throw away. I was a person with my own strength and my own dreams." He was quiet for a long moment, the only sound the running water. He nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "I see you now, Mom," he whispered, his voice full of emotion. "I really see you, and I'm so sorry it took me so long." Our story, the story of our family and our business, became a quiet legend in our town. People would stop me in the street and ask, "How did you do it? How did you forgive him? How did you rebuild?" I always gave them the same answer. "Love is like a seed," I would say. "Sometimes it falls on hard, rocky ground and it can't grow. It looks like it's dead forever. But if you're patient and you're willing to work the soil, to pull out the weeds of pride and hurt, sometimes you get a second chance to make it bloom. It won't be the same plant as before. It will be different, stronger. Its roots will have learned to hold on tighter." One day, I was saying this to the owner of the flower shop, and I didn't realize my son was behind me listening. When I finished, he came and stood beside me and put his arm around my shoulders. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The look on his face said everything. One afternoon, my son and I were in the office, going through old photos for the company's new website. We found the picture of me receiving my award all those years ago. "You were so young," he said, tracing the glass over the photo. "I had big dreams," I said with a soft smile. "I thought I had to leave them behind." "You didn't leave them behind," he said, looking at me. "You just planted them in different soil. And now, I get to be a part of them. That means more to me than you'll ever know." He found another photo from his college graduation, with me beaming beside him. Then he pulled out his phone and showed me a recent picture Sarah had taken of the 2 of us, standing in front of the new hometown pantry factory building. We were both a little older, a little grayer, but we were smiling, standing side by side as equals. "We've both come a long way," he said, his voice full of warmth. The business continued to grow. We opened a small factory on the edge of town and hired 20 more people. My son, with Ben as his right-hand man, managed the entire operation. He had found his true calling. He was no longer the scared, proud man who had come begging for money. He was a confident, kind, and respected leader. He and Sarah started dating. They were good for each other. She brought out his playful side, and he gave her a steady, reliable partner. I watched them sometimes, talking and laughing together in the office, and my heart felt full. He was building a real life now, a life based on shared dreams, hard work, and mutual respect, not on money and appearances. It was the life I had always wanted for him. Today, the sun is shining. I am sitting in my garden, which is now bursting with vegetables and flowers. My son and Sarah are playing with their new golden retriever puppy, its joyful barks filling the air. Mr. Miller and Ben are sitting at the patio table, arguing happily over a chess move. The smell of something delicious comes from the kitchen, where a new employee is learning my stew recipe. My life is full. It is not just full of things to do, but full of people I love and who love me in return. The sharp, stabbing pain of the past is now just a memory, a faded scar that reminds me of how strong I can be. It doesn't hurt anymore. It is a lesson, one I had to learn the hard way. My son disowned me and called me a bad mother. He asked for my help, and I gave it to him. But I didn't just give him money. I gave him a shovel and made him help me dig. We dug through the hard, rocky ground of our past, through the weeds of pride and hurt. It was back-breaking work for both of us. And in that freshly turned soil, we planted a new seed. A seed of understanding, a seed of respect. We watered it with hard work and honesty, and we waited patiently for it to grow. It did grow. It grew into this moment, into the laughter in my garden, into the successful business we run together, into the quiet understanding that passes between us now. He needed to fall to learn how to stand on his own, and I needed to be pushed away to remember how to stand on my own. So my revenge wasn't leaving him in the dirt. My revenge was helping him up, brushing him off, and showing him that we were both stronger than we knew. And that is the sweetest, most heart-touching revenge of all. I didn't just get my son back. I gained a friend, a partner, and a family that was chosen and earned, not just given. And that is a story that will never end.